Well, thank you for the opportunity to present here. The agenda does talk about GEBCO and IODE, but I'm going to talk about one specific project of GEBCO, and that's Seabed 2030. A quick introduction to myself. I am acting today. I'm the acting Seabed 2030 director. We're in the process of recruiting for a permanent director, but unfortunately the deadline for applications was last week, so if anybody didn't get their application in, it's too late now. I believe we've got a large bevy of very strong candidates, and we're looking to have a permanent director in post by June. And in the meantime, as I say, I'll be acting. My day job is Chief Information Officer at the National Oceanography Centre of the UK. I also have another job which is more relevant here. I'm the head of the British Oceanographic Data Centre as well. Okay, so I'll just remind you what is GEBCO, and I've pinched this idea from Shintani, who's the chair of the GEBCO Guiding Committee, and all good questions have 4 answers. So GEBCO is the general bathymetric chart of the ocean. So it is a thing, it's an entity. I like to think of it as an information product or a data product, but it's a tangible output. It started in 1903. It was an initiative of His Serene Highness Prince Albert I of Monaco, passionate marine scientist, and brought together a group of ocean mappers and produced the first charts of the whole ocean. 1903, GEBCO moved forward, produced a series of charts, and in 1994 actually went online and produced the first digital chart from 1994. The current chart is from 2014, and that's a 30 arc second chart. GEBCO is also a joint project of the IHO and the IOC. So we have 2 parents, and we're managed by the GEBCO Guiding Committee. And what is GEBCO trying to achieve? Well, GEBCO is trying to produce the most authoritative, publicly available bathymetry data sets of the world ocean. And the key words there are publicly available, so free to all. GEBCO doesn't tend to use the expression open data, but we have been for some time passionate about open, freely available products. Now, up until recently, GEBCO has also been relatively a voluntary community, a group of scientists and hydrographers that come together, are mapping the ocean for their day job, whether it's hydrography, whether it's research, and for a long time have felt combining the efforts into one definitive map of the ocean is the right thing to do. But it's been largely voluntary up until now. So, Seabed 2030, it's a collaborative project between GEBCO and the Nippon Foundation, and you can trace its origins back to June 2016. The Nippon Foundation funded a forum, the Forum of Future Ocean Floor Mapping in Monaco. We brought together the greats of ocean mapping and really just asked the question, what is the future of ocean mapping? And during that conference, Mr. Sasakawa, the chairman of the Nippon Foundation, really threw down the gauntlet to the ocean mapping community. And his vision was 100%, that's 100% of the ocean mapped by 2030. Quite bold, quite ambitious. So from June 2016, the following year to June 2017, there was a series of meetings between GEBCO and the Nippon Foundation to discuss what that project would look like. And out of that emerged 4 principles of what the project would look like. And a lot of these I've already mentioned today and yesterday. Partnership. So partnership is a key part of Seabed 2030. GEBCO has never tried to map the whole ocean itself. It's really the focus, the coordination, the fulcrum, and bringing communities together. So partnerships key to Seabed 2030. Sharing data, open data, sharing data and sharing information, the second principle. Human capacity development, a strong interest of the Nippon Foundation and also of GEBCO, forms the third principle. And the fourth principle, technology innovation. So we brought those four principles together, developed the Seabed 2030 project, and in June 2017 at the UN Ocean Conference, Mr. Sasakawa announced the start of Seabed 2030. The project itself didn't start until the 1st of February 2018. So we had our first birthday just 2 weeks ago. We're now 1 year old, moving into our second year. A very brief overview of the concept. Seabed 2030 breaks down into two distinct phases. There's a data compilation phase or stream of activity, and that's actually doing what GEBCO's done since 1903. That's aggregating all the existing data together and then publishing that data in the GEBCO Ocean Map. But at some point, we'll have collated all the existing data, and the project will then move into a second phase, which we've coined the expression map the gaps. And at the moment, we're still in the planning phase of map the gaps. But as the project moves forward, the effort will move more from the data compilation into mapping the gaps, and then we'll have a slightly different project. And the data compilation will become more BAU, business as usual. And there'll be annual releases of the GEBCO products. So up until now, release between the products has been 3 to 4 to 5 years. We're now moving on an annual release cycle as more data becomes available. Management of Seabed 2030. On the left-hand side is the operational management of the project. The project on a day-to-day basis is managed by the Seabed 2030 project team, and they report to the GEBCO guiding committee. We as the project team have to have our work plan for each year. We work on a yearly basis. We have our work plan for next year endorsed by the GEBCO guiding committee, and we have our annual report, what we did last year, approved by the GEBCO guiding committee. However, on the right-hand side, we've formed a sponsors group which consists of the IOC Secretariat, and you can see Vladimir and Julian over to the left there. Next to Vladimir is David Wyatt of the IHO at the back, and then moving to the right is Mr. Uno, who's the Executive Director of the Nippon Foundation, who'll be speaking this afternoon. I don't believe he's here yet, so no. And then there's myself in the middle, and then over to the right is Matthias Jonas and Mustafa Iptis, who are the IHO Secretariat. And then the gentleman furthest to the right is Martin Jakobsen, and then Mao Asibi, who's part of the Nippon Foundation. So the sponsors meet and input to strategy to the Seabed 2030. The structure of Seabed 2030, it's evolved from how GEBCO has operated for the past number of years. Central to it is the project team, and the project team are the leads of the regional and global centres and the director. We have created 4 regional centres and a global centre. They feed in and form the project team and do the day-to-day work. top right are some of the existing GEBCO subcommittees. I won't go through all the acronyms, but the top one is the Regional Mapping Subcommittee. SCUFN is the Undersea Feature Naming Subcommittee, and TSCOM is the Technical Committee of GEBCO. They still feed in and are a central part of Seabed 2030, hence the arrow. Just below the GEBCO committees is the IHO DCDB, the Data Centre for Digital Bathymetry. Well, there's no arrows there because this is a structural diagram. The IHO DCDB is very much part of the project, and there'll be some arrows on the next few diagrams indicating where DCDB fits in. But it's not part of the Nippon Foundation funded part of the project, hence no arrows. The Nippon Foundation over to the left there, and then there's an advisory group which will be the conduit for external strategic advice into the project, which we're just forming at the moment. Just to give you where the locations of those 4 regional centres, so over on the right of the list of the regional centres, we split the ocean into 4 regions. There was some discussion of how many regions were required, so it's been a compromise to have just the right amount, not too many, not too few, and to a large extent based on existing GEBCO activity as well. So there's the North Pacific and Arctic Ocean, which is coloured kind of grey at the top there. That's a shared regional centre, shared between Stockholm University in Sweden and the University of New Hampshire. The Southern Ocean Regional Centre is based at Arvi. That's down the bottom there in the blue. The Indian Ocean Atlantic Regional Centre, the green, based at Columbia University. And then the final regional centre, the South West Pacific Ocean, is again a shared centre between 3 organisations in New Zealand: NIWA, LINS, GNS. And down the bottom to the left, the Global Centre, which is located at the British Oceanographic Data Centre, part of the National Oceanographic Centre in the UK, the yellow dot in the middle. And across those centres, we now have the order of 24 staff working in the regional and the global centres. Moving on to the data flow, and I'm going to work from the right and I'll work backwards. I'm not actually an ocean mapper, I'm not a marine scientist. I'm more of a software developer, so I always think of user requirements and work backwards. The grid itself, or the products, will be created by the Global Centre, and the Global Centre will take the regional products from the regional centres. So the regional centres will create regional products, pass them to the Global Centre. The Global Centre will stitch those 4 regional products together to create the global product. The data will come from various sources, ideally from the IHO DCDB, but we acknowledge there's data coming from many different sources. And to the far right, as I've just mentioned, a whole set of different data collectors. This is a scientific conference and it needed an equation. So here's the one equation. And this breaks it down. I used to be a mathematician, so I keep it nice and simple. And I've distilled it this simple because when we announced Seabed 2030, we got an awful lot of press coverage, the Times, the BBC, Reuters, Newsweek, and however much you explain these concepts, we're often, if not always, misquoted. And if you took top left there, 18%, we're often quoted that the ocean's been mapped 18%, or 18% of the ocean is mapped. Well, we don't actually know how much of the ocean is mapped. That's one of the objectives of GEBCO, to answer that. And if we go to my equation, I think very simply that X is the data that's today in GEBCO. Y is the data that's been collected but not yet in GEBCO. So X plus Y is actually what's being mapped. And then Z is the gap, that's the unknown. Now at the moment in the 2014 30-second grid, X equals 18%. So of all the grid cells in the GEBCO grid, 18% have a data point in them. 82% don't. So that's the challenge for seabed 2030. And if it's okay, I'll just keep going a little bit longer and eat into coffee time. I won't labour this fact other than just to reiterate that partnerships are key to seabed 2030. Skipping over, so back to my simple equation, I just wanted to highlight the role of technology innovation in the project. We have entered a team into the Shell Ocean Discovery X Prize. We GEBCO Nippon Foundation, are a finalist in that competition, and we find out soon how well we did. When I give this presentation, I'm often asked, given that GEBCO has been operating since 1903, why do we think now we can actually achieve the vision? I think that breaks down into two answers. The top one, there is now a compelling need, and I won't labour this fact because I think Vladimir and Julian and others yesterday very clearly articulated the need. The earth, the ocean is under stress. We do have a compelling need to understand the ocean. But underneath, I think there's three solutions come together. And the key one for me, well, all of them are important, but I'll just talk about the first one in the middle, autonomy at the moment. So if you want to map the ocean seabed with existing ships, it's going to take many hundreds of years. But we're just at that tipping point where marine autonomous systems will give us the ability to map the ocean bed autonomously. And I just show the Argo network as an example. Who'd have believed when this started in 2000, was it, that today we'd have nearly 4,000 floats collecting data from across the whole ocean. So autonomy, marine autonomous systems is the key to the realising Vision 2030. And then the other two innovations, and innovations of different types that are going to allow seabed 2030 to realise its vision, and that's the general information technology that's happened, that innovation that's happened, the cloud, big data, the Internet of Things. We now have the technology infrastructure to deal with the data that we're talking about. And on the right-hand side, there's the cultural innovation. I do believe now that society is reforming its relationship with data, and that's scientific data and social media data. But more and more you'll see open data becoming mainstream and benefiting society. So how can you get involved? Well, give us your data. Support data sharing, contact the regional or global centres, and promote GEBCO activities. Some up and coming events. There is a regional mapping event in Niwa in a couple of weeks. Please go along if you feel free. And the first GEBCO grid since seabed 2030 started is out soon, next month sometime. It'll be a 15-arc grid. We haven't calculated the percent coverage yet, so it's above 18, but we're still waiting for the mappers to actually calculate the coverage. And I'll leave it there with thanks, and thank you to the time over and a little bit, and I'll stop.